So I assume, Avnish, that when you allow me to share screen, only then I can share my screen, right?
Yeah.
Yes, that's correct. You'll see Pratik is the host, so he'll hand over presentation rights to you, and then you can share.
Okay.
Thanks, Pratik. Hi, folks. I see we've already got a lot of people have joined in. While it's 3 o'clock, we'll just give a couple of more minutes for some last minute joinees and then we'll get started. Okay, I think we'll get started. And I think more and more people can come in. So first of all, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the launch of the Uday Case Study Competition, brought to you by Mumbai FinTech Hub, Sehmati, and PwC. Mumbai FinTech Hub, as some of you know, is the fintech vertical of the government of Maharashtra, and has a primary focus on looking at the growth of the fintech sector in the state, as well as being one of the front runners looking at the larger country as well. And one of their key strategies is around building fintech talent through education. And that is what Uday is. So Uday is the flagship fintech education program of the Mumbai FinTech Hub, and focuses on assisting students like yourselves who are interested in pursuing careers in fintech by equipping you with the relevant knowledge, courses, information, access to industry that you need to explore such careers. And it's that same philosophy that we've kept for this case study competition as well. And I think that will become apparent as we go through it, where the whole idea is to introduce you to some really key fintech concepts and also tap into your creativity as students to see how we can innovate and how we can come up with new ideas. This edition of the competition specifically focuses on the account aggregator framework and its role in providing opportunities for innovation in the financial services space. And so given that is the theme, we are really delighted to partner with Sehmati for this edition. Sehmati, as some of you know, is a collective of the account aggregator ecosystem. And we have Mr. B.G. Mahesh, who is a co-founder at Sehmati, to provide you with an introduction to the key concepts related to the account aggregator framework, and also to set the tone on what Sehmati will be looking at when it comes to this competition as well. Mahesh has been very vocal about how he's always wanted to tap into the country's youth in terms of their ability to really innovate and ideate. And we're really excited that through this case competition, we can also get a good sense of what you guys are thinking about. We are also honored to have Professor Vikram Pandya, Director FinTech at the SP Jain Management. Professor Pandya comes with a real wealth of experience, and he has agreed to take a quick session on APIs today. APIs form a key component of the entire account aggregator framework, and so we're really delighted to have him, take you through that, because that will also be an important concept for you to understand while you look at shaping your ideas. So that's going to be the agenda. We'll first start off with these two knowledge sessions. We'll first have Mahesh talk about the account aggregator piece, what their role is and what the potential for such a framework is. And then we'll bring in Professor Pandya to talk to you about APIs. As has been with other knowledge sessions, we want this to be very interactive. So we invite you to ask your questions via the Q&A WebEx facility. So if you look at your screens right now, you'll find that we've shown you screenshots of how it looks. So if you're using your computer, you can just tap on the circle with the 3 dots and click on Q&A. And once you click on Q&A, make sure you address it to the entire panel. Right? So you choose all panelists, and then you can type in your questions, and we will be able to see it, and then we can ask the questions to the 2 panelists today. If you're using your phone, it's a similar flow, where you again touch this, click on the same button, click on the Q&A option, choose all panelists, and then you can type in your questions. So that'll be the format. I think I already saw one chat question where somebody was asking whether we will be sharing this presentation. So yes, we will be sharing it after this. So we'll also share, get into details about that. After Mahesh and Vikram cover their sessions, I will also come back and provide more context related to the competition itself, what is going to be exactly expected of you, and what the key dates and the next steps are going to be. But to begin with, really excited to kick things off. Mahesh, over to you first. I think if you can share screen and get started. Really happy to have you. Welcome.
Thank you, Avnish, for the introduction. Good afternoon, everybody. It's actually a great pleasure, to be connecting with so many students today. I trust all of you are doing safe. As Avnish has already introduced me, I will actually skip it, but I will, say that Sehmati is a not-for-profit organization which is working on growing this account aggregator ecosystem. And in today's event, we will explain, what it exactly does and, why it exactly came into place. So I will share my screen. Yeah. So can you see it?
Yes, Mitch. You can see it.
Thanks. So 3 sections today. I will explain about why exactly this entire space actually started, what the problem is, and what exactly it solves, and how it solves. And the second part will be the most important one, where I speak about few of the use cases, which is what you students will be actually going to work upon in this competition. So the your challenges we face today in this digital of finance sector today is there's a lot of problem in acquiring the information. Now, for example, if you actually go to any of the bank and you're applying for a loan, okay, typically you will have to be submitting the hard copies of your bank statement, or you will be emailing the PDF statements, from all your bank accounts. Now, if few of the lenders usually insist you get a hard copy, which is signed actually by the manager, and if you have more than one account, and if they're not in the same part of the city, or even if it is not in the same city, I think you can actually think on how hard it is to go to each of the banks and actually get these documents. And it is hard for acquiring the data. You have friction, and also for the one who's sharing the information, even for them there's a lot of pain points. And how about the data leak? See, when you hand over the information to any institution, you have actually no idea on who is actually seeing your data, who's accessing your data, are they making copies of it? Okay, so the your data principal, or what we call, is the owner of the data, has absolutely no idea on who all are actually seeing your information. So in view of all of these issues, the banks were always agreeing to use a data sharing framework. Okay, what we mean is a standardized framework on how a information provider can share information with a seeker, like wherever you have your bank accounts, they are able to send information to the lending bank. But the banks and other institutions wanted to use only a regulated framework, which is blessed by their regulators. So I request those students to also get very familiar with the with the India's Personal Data Protection Bill on Sahamati's website. I request you to see the your resources tab, which has a wealth of information, and I will explain the highlight of this this PDP bill, which mainly says that for any data flow happening, whether in the offline world or in the online world, okay, without the explicit consent of the data principal, which means the owner of the data, there can be no data flow. And also the one who's seeking information should declare the purpose for requesting the data. To give an example, if a lending bank is asking for your data, they need to explicitly state, I'm asking for your bank statements for the purpose of the home loan. And the PDP bill says once you acquire the data, the information can be used for that purpose only. It cannot be used for anything else. So moving on to the next slide. So now you all know that see, the data is the new oil, is the new thing which you all hear a lot across the world. If you see the value of the data economy is about $3 trillion as of now, and in our opinion, it will become a lot more when your countries like India will embrace the account aggregator framework. So as I explained, the the folks who are sharing information are very worried on how their information is used and is their privacy is safe or or actually not. And if you see in today's world, we all are already having we are already sharing our information. For example, when you browse the internet, the like actually the online banners you see example, they use your information to understand what kind of person are you. I mean, what are your interests, what is your age group, and all of that, and according to that you see the like actually banners on the site. So the corporations are benefiting from your data, and what the account aggregator wants to do is completely reverse that pyramid. We want the users to actually economically gain from their own data. So, this diagram is the crux of this entire presentation. I want you to pay attention to this. See, the one you see on your left is the financial information providers, which we refer to as FIPs. So these are the institutions where your information is there. Example, the banks, NBFCs, the mutual fund, insurance provider, like example, DigiLocker, tax, and say your telco. So your information is with the FIPs. The FIUs are the institutions which want access to your information for a particular purpose. So what the account aggregator is doing is not anything new. The FIPs have always been sharing information with the FIUs, but it is the data principal who's actually sharing this information, but it is being done in a very in a very crude way, and it is not in a scalable way. So the account aggregator will solve this problem. And I would also want to say that these account aggregators, which you see, are are licensed entities from the RBI. They all get a license called NBFC AA license. And if one wants to participate in AA, the FIPs and FIUs also should be regulated entities. The account aggregator is approved by 4 regulators, which is RBI, SEBI, IRDAI, which is the insurance regulator, and PFRDA, which is the pension fund regulator. So the 4 regulators have actually they come together to agree upon the account aggregator framework. So what it exactly means is everything in this is standardized. As we go forward, I will have it shown to you, but to give you one example, the way the FIU interacts with account aggregators, it is fully standardized. The APIs, which in Mr. Vikram will be going to explain, will be the same. So when a bank will request for the information aggregator 1 or account aggregator 2, the API is the same. So, and when we come to the schema, so the information which will come from each bank, say for example, is about the bank statement. The structure of the bank statement has been standardized. As of now, if you see the exact structure of the bank statement across each of the banks may not be the same. So for the FIUs today, it becomes more hard to process the bank statements across the banks. With account aggregator, the schemas are standardized. So the like all the insurance, example policies, the information when it comes, irrespective of from which insurance company it is. It could be LIC or SBI, but for the FIU, the information which will come, the structure will be the same. So you would agree it becomes very easy for the FIU to process the data. So there is no extra information, I mean, extra effort involved in you're processing the data. So now I will explain to you the full flow from the FIU, to the FIP. When you go, okay, even before I go there, I just want to show you there are 7 account aggregators which have been approved by the, by the RBI today. So when you apply and it is approved, you get something called in principle license, and after you meet the requirements, the account aggregator will get an operating license, which means once you get the operating license, that account aggregator is allowed to launch commercially. The first 3, what you see, the CAMS, FinView, and OneMoney are, as of now, are the ones which have already received their operating license. Now, if I go to any of the bank and apply for a home loan, so the bank will want to have access to say for 1 year of the bank statements. Okay, so now usually you have a form where you fill your name, your address, the job, and all of that. I assume that the folks on the on this call are extremely familiar with the UPI apps, and when you use those apps, you have a UPI handle. In a similar way, in account aggregator, when you create an account with account aggregators, you will get an account aggregator handle. So if I had opened an account with CAMS, say my handle would be my phone number at CAMS, or Mahesh at CAMS, Mahesh at Geo, it'll be like that. And when I open an account, it works exactly like the UPI app, where you discover my accounts. Like, I will inform the account aggregator, I have an account with SBI, HDFC, ICICI, IDFC first. I'll be able to discover, and then I will link my accounts. It works exactly like the way you are already doing that in the UPI apps. So when I apply for a loan at an FIU, at a bank, so there'll be a new field in future, whether in the hard copy or in the online, where it says AA handle, where I'm going to fill Mahesh at CAMS. Okay, how about I enter that? So the FIU will send a request to the CAMS account aggregator saying that Mahesh has applied for a loan. The purpose code, as I said, is loan, and we want his 1 year of bank statements. So this FIU has no clue with whom I have accounts, with which bank accounts. It has simply informed the account aggregator they want access to my bank account statements. The account aggregator will send me a notification on my account aggregator app saying that you have, it appears that you have applied for a home loan, and this FIU wants access of 1 year of your bank statements. Okay, we want your consent to share the data. So how would we assume in this account aggregator app, I have linked 4 bank accounts, but I choose to share the bank statements of 1 year of only 2 bank accounts. So it is really up to the data principal on, from which FIPs I want to share my information. Okay, and so I choose the 2 bank accounts of which I want to share the information, and I give my consent. And as you all know, Sahmati means in Sanskrit, it means consent. So the account aggregators, the core is to receive the consent, or to give a consent to share the data. So the account aggregator now sends what we call the consent artifact, which is explained well on our Sahmati blog. I would encourage all the students to actually see it. It has been explained in depth with examples. Okay, so it will send the a request now to the two banks, and the banks know that this information has come from an approved account aggregator, and the account aggregator has done the necessary due diligence about me, and only when it was approved and they're convinced, it has sent this request to the two bank accounts. So the two bank accounts will actually get my bank statement for a year. It will encrypt it now. Okay, it will encrypt all the information using the public key of the FIU. You should be familiar with when it comes to encryption with the public and the private key. So the FIP1 and FIP2 will encrypt all the data, my bank statement of a year, with the public encryption key of the FIU, which can be decrypted only with the private key, which is a secret key, which is with the FIU. Now it sends this information to the account aggregator, and once the account aggregator has received this information, it hands it over to the FIU. And as soon as it is handed over to the FIU, it has to delete the data. The account aggregator regulation says that the account aggregator is not allowed to store, view, or process the data. Anyway, the account aggregator will not be able to do it, because all the data which is flowing through the account aggregator is encrypted. So it is actually a data blind. So I will explain this very quickly as a full thing on how it went. The FIU will send a request to the AA asking for information. The account aggregator will ask me, the data principal, ask for my consent, and I will choose the FIPs from which I want information to be shared. Account aggregator will send that request or the consent artifacts, to the relevant FIPs. FIPs will encrypt the information, send it to the account aggregator, and the account aggregator hands it over to the FIU. Now, all the information which has comes from FIP to the FIU, it is in a standardized format. It is agreed format, which is we call the schemas, and they're all in the XML format. So it's an XML format. Now the FIU can choose on how exactly they want to use it, but the FIU can use it for the purpose of the loan only, because when they get all my information for loan, okay, they may think that, okay, my profile fits well even for the wealth management division, but they will not be allowed to share that information with the wealth management. And Sahamati is going to have some what we call the data governance, okay, which the FIUs need to follow, which means for whatever they had said they want the information, they can use only for that purpose. Shall we go ahead?
Yeah, so far so good.
Yeah.
Still waiting for some questions to come.
Okay.
I think, as Mahesh said, please send in your questions so that we can then cover it with Mahesh. Mahesh, go ahead.
So as I informed you that the account aggregators will not be able to see your data. It can see it flowing, but it will be fully encrypted, so it will not be able to make any sense out of it. So it won't be able to resell your data. Okay, and it also allows you your data principal is allowed to revoke your consent at any point of time, which I will explain to you as we go forward. Okay, now the leading banks have already embraced this, and I would say in the month of June, the majority of the names you see on the slide, will be on the production server. They are already on the UAT server where all the testing is happening. You would agree that if you see the first row, the SBI, ICICI, HDFC, Axis, IndusInd, IDFC, the Kotak all form a very huge chunk of the banking system. So, which is almost could be as high as 60% or 50 to 60% of the users are amongst all these banks. And once they go live, we do expect a lot more banks to actually join this ecosystem, because in a year or so, we would like to see more than the 100 banks to come on board. And NBFCs in India, run to almost about 10,000 of them. Then you have insurance companies in India. You have your pension funds. All of them will be actually joining this ecosystem. So how exactly this ecosystem works? As I said, if you see the blog, it explains on how the consent artifact will go from the account aggregator to the FIP. I will show one example here, very quickly. And the APIs what we have been standardized. So the way the FIU speak with an account aggregator has been fully standardized. The way the account aggregator speaks with an FIP have been standardized, and the way FIP speaks to an account aggregator, all of them. And at the last one, as I said, is the schemas, the format and the structure of the example, the bank statement, the insurance policy, the income tax statement. All of them have been standardized. So the framework we follow, as we say, it's called the organs. So you will see that we follow the open standard and open architecture, which means all the APIs and schemas have been published. It is for anybody to consume, but as I said, for now this is open only to the regulated entities from any of these four regulators. And when we say it is the open architecture, it also means that these schemas or APIs can be improved upon. Okay, you'll be able to build upon what is already there. Revocable, these consent, you can revoke it. For example, I can give to an FIU the access to my bank statement, or not to access only once, but for like say for about 1 year, I can say to the FIU, you can have access to my my statement like like every fortnight. But at some point of time, if I'm not happy with the service which is provided by the FIU, I will be able to revoke the consent. A granular, I can seek, like extremely granular data, what I want to share. For example, I can share my entire bank statement, for a month, for a day. Or like, like when I want to share the bank balance of a day, which is, as you all would know, that it is an intersection of a row and a column. So it is extremely granular. Or I could say that you please share only the debits in my bank statement for the last 1 year, or only the credits, or also share only the transactions between Mahesh and somebody else. Share only that. In the real world, sometimes when you have to show somebody that you have actually you transferred the amount, we actually take a hard copy of the bank statement. We actually you black out the ones which others should not see. But in AA, you'll be able to share only what you want. Audit, if when in the account aggregator app, you'll be able to see the logs every time the FIU is pulling the information from your FIP. You will be able to see which FIU accessed your information from which FIP and for what purpose. Your notice is every time the FIU is accessing your information, the account aggregator app will be notifying you that, hey, this FIU for which you had given a actually consent, you had actually given a consent is now accessing your information, and this entire framework is very secure, as I said, because we use end-to-end encryption is being used. This is one example when you are applying for a loan. If you see the one which is highlighted, it says the FIU wants one-time access to your bank account. Your period, which you can see in the third and fourth line, is for 6 months of your bank statement from which FIP it is asking. Your purpose is for loan application. The range is there. The data life means in the 15 days only the FIU is allowed to access your information. I mean, you process your information. After 15 days, the FIU is not allowed to process your information. So as you can clearly see, the user is in control over here. So one more example, what we call here is a recurring consent. So like if you see the your data in life is 5 years, and the your period which we have is again for 5 years, and the FIU is allowed to be pulling your information on a daily basis. So this we call it as a recurring consent. So here the three main pillars of what you've seen is the technology, where you saw the two examples of the your consent artifact. Okay, and this your presentation will be shared with you, so you'll have access to it. And this information is also there on a blog. And the institutions which are the new account aggregators and Sahamati, and the law. This is backed, okay, by the upcoming PDP bill and the account aggregator master directive, which has been announced by the RBI. So we'll actually go into the use cases. So now the FIU has already received information. So what will it do with it? So now because the
Sorry to interrupt. I thought there are a couple of questions that are coming that might be relevant for the previous section. I thought I'd just quickly ask you those, and then we can move on to this.
Okay.
Couple quite interesting questions. So one is, how do you ensure that the data that is being transferred to the FIU is being used for the purpose that the FIU is claiming to use it for? So I guess the question is, when the FIU is requesting data, do they have to define what the data is going to be used for?
Yeah. So now if you see on the example on the screen, it is set for loan, and it has to be only for that. And all of you need to understand the FIU is a regulated entity. Okay, so they need to follow the law, the rules by their own regulator. And you do have some technology products in the field of data governance, which FIUs will be going to use to ensure the data is being used only for that purpose. And the your violation according to this new PDP bill, for every violation of the data usage, okay, you have to pay a huge fine. I think it is okay. I think it is like about 20% of your global revenue or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Manish. Another one was for the account aggregators themselves. Are they also going to be audited entities? How will that work?
Yeah, all three are regulated entities. As I said in the beginning, all the account aggregators are licensed entities from the Reserve Bank of India. So you apply with the RBI, and the RBI will first going to give you the in-principle license, and afterwards the AA applies for an operating license. So it is very much an regulated entity, and the name of the the license they get is NBFC AA license.
Perfect. One last question before you move on, and this is from the perspective of the individuals. So, is AA going to be something that will be compulsory for individuals? Is one question. And secondly, as an individual, would I have access to the relevant encryption code to access the data that is being shared? Those are the two questions.
So the first one, yeah, no, obviously it won't be mandatory. But as we actually go forward, I see that everybody will be on this system. For example, if you see 15 years ago, we all were, yeah, of course, the ones on the calls were, like actually small kids. But I'm just telling that, we all were like actually giving checks, and the amount, the frequency at which we are, yes, actually handing over or issuing the checks have actually, so come down because you're doing online transfer, your UPI transfers. In a similar way, we expect when it comes to sharing of the data, now it is happening in offline or in an extremely crude way where you hand over your credentials, to the receiving the party who's able to extract from your bank account. So it would be a natural and obvious and an intelligent transfer, a transition from where we are onto the new in the ecosystem which is coming out. Yeah, what was the second question?
Okay, the other one was, as an individual, will I have access to the same encryption key to access my data?
Yes, you can, because in the account aggregator app, you will be able to see your balances and the statements. So your account aggregator app acts as somewhat like an FIU itself, where you are able to see the balances and your data.
Perfect. One last question, and then you can go on, Mahesh. I thought it's a really interesting one. So, what is the incentive for the FIPs to be part of this? Like, why would they want to share data? I think that's a question that is.
Yeah. So, if you want to acquire data, the rule we have is you have to share data. If you want to be a taker, you have to be a giver. Okay, that is one. And okay, I'm actually glad you asked this. Because your data, this, okay, your PDP bill, says, like actually clearly that you have a right to request your FIP to that you should be able to share your data. Okay, so obviously the account aggregator framework makes it far easier for the FIP to be, just sharing the data.
No, thank you so much, Mahesh. There are a few more questions that will come, but I think you can move on now. And once I'll come back again.
Yeah, a few more slides, okay, by which we'll be done, and we can actually go to Q&A. So now, see, like any framework or any platform will be of any use only if the use cases are extremely powerful. So now what I showed you is you're able to share the data, but what will you do with the data? So now that the FIUs or the lenders are able to get easy access to your data, okay, and it is, your verified data. So when my FIP will share the data with FIU, it is, okay, you're digitally signed. So the FIU knows this bank statement actually came from this particular bank. Okay, so the, your trust factor is more. So now these, like actually the banks are getting information from FIPs in a machine readable format. Okay, so which they're able to process it instantly. So when you walk into a bank, once they get access to your information, almost in about 30 seconds or 60 seconds, a lender is able to inform you whether you qualify for the loan or not. So you can just see that how much it will change. If a bank was you're processing, say, about 15 applications a day, now they can at least do, I don't know, maybe like 100, 200 or this thing, because the entire thing they're going to lean upon is only technology. So by having access to all this information, all the banks are, all the lenders are able to de-risk their loan books, which means they're able to give loans to people who actually should be qualifying, and they will not be giving loans to people who in the past were wrongfully qualifying. So they'll improve their books. Now the biggest segment in India, when it comes to the lending, all of the students would be seeing, all these stimulus packages which have been coming is, directed a lot towards MSMEs. I don't know how many of you are aware, a mere 8% of MSMEs in India have access to formal credit. Formal credit means from the banks. Okay, even if they have loans, they go outside and take loans from the private lenders, which are far more expensive. Instead of paying an interest rate of say 12%, 15%, they may be paying 25 or actually 30%. Okay, so by having access to the bank statement and example a GST, okay, a field which already exists, a product which exists, will become in India a lot more popular, which we call a cash flow lending, because now the banks will be able to lend to MSMEs based on their cash flow and not on their what they have. Not all MSMEs will be able to give a collateral. They can't give their home or a factory. But if you look at their actually cash flow, it will be extremely strong. So at least by having access to this information, actually the banks will be able to actually give loans. As you can see, a huge number, almost a 90 and odd percent of MSMEs are not having access to formal credit. So here is an example. So we have an MSME owner who is already having the digital footprints. He is having a GST statement, the bank statement, everything is there, which they'll be able to share with the FIU, and the FIU will be able to instantly see and inform the owner, the MSME owner, whether he will actually qualify for a loan or not. So as I said earlier, we want to reverse the actual trend. We want the data principle to be empowered, financially empowered by their own data. So here, as we said, he is able to get loan with his own information, which we believe it is one of the first or the first one in the world where this account aggregator was designed, where we wanted to empower the owners of the information by which they are able to benefit. And you have one more field which I encourage all of you to start, to use the PFM apps, which will look into your bank statements, the way you're spending. It is able to detect about how much you earn, about how you're spending, and if you're doing anything wrong. So this is also an extremely powerful use case. When it comes to the field of the wealth management, today, the clients of the wealth managers are sharing all the bank statements by email and all of that, and the wealth manager on an every month basis is not able to proceed unless the client is sharing that information by them manually. Instead, if we give the consent to all our information which our manager is seeking, we can always say that every second of the month, all my bank statements, one copy can go to my wealth manager. So you can see that it is happening in a very smooth way, okay, by which the wealth manager is able to do his or her work. Yeah, robo advisory, it is, mainly for the millennials, very, very popular amongst them. Okay, because, I would say the young today are more comfortable to speak with the mobile phones and, not people like me. So I think, when they use these apps, it is able to look at your statements, and it can look at your your risk appetite, and it is able to advise you on where exactly you are able to invest upon. So now the the main thing comes up. You all could be working upon what are the other use cases which you think this account aggregator ecosystem can use. See, like example, when I say the use cases for Bharat, which is the real India, which is the I would say India 2, India 3. Okay, how exactly can we, as a account aggregator community, come up with a use case by which their economic wealth can improve? Yeah, millennials, which is exactly with whom I'm actually actually speaking with. I mean, it'll be good if you can come up with few use cases, which can solve the problems which you people are having. Now, for MSMEs, I gave one example, which is the cash flow lending. And okay, now the ones which have been in news are the your migrant workers. Okay, is there something we can do, by which this account aggregator ecosystem will have a use case, for them? So, the thing is, we expect by end of the year, more than about 100 banks will be on this. And this account aggregators, system is not only for to share the financial data, afterwards it can be used to share your health data, your education data. About your education data, how about I give an example very quickly that, when you go to a actually college for your admission, you give a hard copy of your 10th marks card and all that. You have a seal notarized and all of that. Instead, you can, through the app, you'll be able to share from your respective actually board, like it'll be handed over to the your colleges where you want to share, and instantly it'll be done. And we believe this ecosystem in India will be extremely big. As you know, the UPI apps, the number of the transactions which are happening in the UPI world has gone well above a billion every month, and it was launched like about 3.5 years ago. And we strongly believe the account aggregator ecosystem will be far bigger than that. And as I have already informed, the account aggregator, I mean, Sahamati is a not for profit and actually company. We are working to expand this ecosystem, which means we want to get more banks on it, more insurance companies on it. We are improving the standards. We are certifying the like actually all the banks which have installed the FIP and FIU. Okay, because when I say that it is being certified, it means it is implemented according to the standards which have been defined by the regulators. Okay, and we have already developed something called the central registry, which will have the names of all AAs, FIPs, and FIUs which have been certified by us, which will help the ecosystem to know that it is safe to be communicating with that entity. So and as we go forward, we do expect that we will be publishing few of the research papers based on the use cases, and to see on whom it is actually helping in what way. We do think, and we are very actually you're confident the account aggregator is something which the not only India but the fintech across the world will be actually seeing extremely closely. So yeah, that's it from me, guys. If you have any questions, I'm happy to respond to them.
Thank you so much, Mahesh. I think this was really helpful. And just to reiterate, I think Mahesh has also mentioned it. The Sahamati website has a blog which has a lot of very useful information about the concepts. You can also go there. We will also share that and other reading material apart from this presentation with you as well. so that you have that as reference as you are ideating on what solutions you want to talk about. Manish, I'll just cover a couple of questions and then we'll move into, I'll invite Vikram to start. One question is another interesting one. Like you mentioned earlier, there are a number of different account aggregators currently present. So the
Yes.
question is around, given that that is the case, is there like a fragmentation of services that will happen? The question is it possible that some institutions will be connected to some A's and not connected to the others? Is that a possibility?
Yeah. Okay, so now here we have some rules here. Like number one, as I told, an FIU should also be an FIP, which means if you want data, you have to share data. In the same way, an FIP has to work with all account aggregators, and FIU will also work with all account aggregators, because the purpose of this ecosystem is to allow the data, a principle to share the data. So when I go to a actually bank, it is up to me with which account aggregator I want to use. So the interoperability is the actual key over here. So if I give you a real example, which each of you are already are, like if you are having a phone number from Airtel, you are able to make a call to Jio. You are also able to receive a call from BSNL. So we are not, it is not a closed loop. It is interoperable. Okay. So in the same way, it is up to the your data principle on which account aggregator they want to use.
Perfect. And I think a larger question which somebody asked was, so how do A's make money? What is their business model in all this?
Yes. So the FIUs will be paying the account aggregator for the service. So the bank where apply for a loan, which is already spending now to acquire data, your process data. Okay, now we'll be going to use this account aggregator system, which will be, according to us, it will be cheaper than what they're spending now, and the your data they get is in your machine readable format, so it is far more useful, far more usable, which is one. And you do have space for more than one account aggregator in India, because India is a very, very diverse country. Okay, so you do have like you have students, you have MSMEs, you have millennials, you have India too. So an account aggregator could always choose on which user base, or what is their target audience which they are interested in.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mesh. I'm going to ask you one last question, and then Vikram, I'll pass it on to you. And Mesh, this is something you covered earlier, but I thought it's worth just reiterating, because that will also influence the ideas that the students have in terms of use cases. Like you mentioned, there's a huge scope for the kind of data that can be shared through this framework, right?
Yeah.
Currently, like you said, and within financial data itself, there's also a huge scope of data that can be shared. And currently, the examples you've given have been banks being as FIPs and FIUs. But as you also mentioned in your last slide, there is a scope for this to really expand in terms of the breadth of data. I was wondering if you want to just spend a couple of minutes just talking about what are the different kinds of data. I thought just to get the creative juices flowing for the students.
Yes. See, as of now, the entities which are under RBI, SEBI, insurance, and the pension fund regulators will be part of A, which means your insurance, policy, your AMF investment, your equity investment, your your pension fund if you have invested, all that is already part of it. We do expect, once it will go live, and we are able to, demonstrate to the regulator that we need to expand the, your definition of FIPs to include, say, example, the GST, the income tax, which are not actually, a part of the regulators now. Okay, it is now outside these four regulators. But if we are able to show, which we can, that if we expand the FIPs, then the FIUs will be benefiting a lot, which means your data principles will be able to get far better service. To give one real example to you, in smaller towns, okay, I've heard that when the home loans are given to in the small towns, the loan size could be 1 lakh or 2 lakhs. And because these people may not have a thick file with the credit bureaus, these lenders look at your mobile bills of the borrower. So, someday if we are able to share all that information through the account aggregator, it becomes far easier for the FIU to approve the loan. And finally, it is the borrower who will benefit. Otherwise, he has to take the hard copy of the phone bill and he has to take the example submitted. So, in my opinion, when you students are going to work on the use cases, I would say you should completely think out of the box. Even if a new FIP has to come in, how about you actually you propose it, okay? And because we want to make this ecosystem more and more useful, and we know that the best examples can come from actually the students and the young.
Thank you so much, Mesh. I think it's been really helpful. We'll, as I mentioned earlier, students, we will also share reading material with you and happy to cover any questions. But now, delighted to have Professor Pandya start. Professor, as we mentioned, he will be looking at the API paradigm and how that is a really important cog in the whole account aggregator framework. Over to you, Professor.
Yes, thanks, Avnish, and thanks, Mahesh, for summarizing beautifully about how the account aggregator framework works. Students, good afternoon. I will very quickly cover the agenda today, which we are going to cover. So we are going to start by understanding what is the API, and then we are going to look very quickly into certain real-world examples, and then we will end with Sahamati itself, so that you can understand how you can apply the concepts which you have learned today in a real-world scenario. So let's begin. Let's start with the definition of API. In a very simple terms, if you look at APIs are set of programming code that enables data transmission between one or more applications. Now, when you talk about applications, you all know that you can have web application and you can have even standalone application. APIs are information pathways which allows this application to share data, transmit data over the channel. That channel can be internet or it can be any other channel. So, but APIs are required in order to request some data and then there will be some response of the data, right? So that is what the API means in very simple terms. Now, this is the good example to look at, and this example will also explain the working nature of API, how it works, why APIs are required. That is something this diagram will tell you. So what we are looking at right now is that on the left-hand side, you are looking at application, mobile applications. Of course, you all have used weather applications in your life. So one weather application is used by Indian user and another is by UK user. Now, this mobile application developer, the developer of this mobile application has used web services from a company called as a weatherstack.com, which is in between. That's the server of that company. And that server is providing the data which is required at the end user level. But how do they get data? So when you look at their information source is weather station 1, 2, 3, and so many other sources can be there. What we are looking right now is how the data can be made and how the data consumption can be made. So in this case, what happens is that if you want to create the working application which gives you the real-time weather data, what you need to do is that you need to, of course, one way is to create your own weather service, right? In case of that, you need to install your own weather station, get data from that weather station, and then publish. But that is very costly. What you can do is that you can simply subscribe to the services like WeatherStack. In turn, they are getting data from all the weather stations in the world. Most of the times, these data feeds are free. If it is not free also, then whatever is the cost and whatever is the free service, they will consolidate, they will aggregate, and then they will store it at the centralized server, which you can then query and get the data. Now, you must have remembered in a simple word, if you want to look at in Excel, when you type any function, While typing that function, you provide parameters. Like for example, if you say VLOOKUP or statement, then you also need to mention the parameters within that. Similar to that, this is similar to that query which you are making. So mobile application is going to make a query with some parameters. In this case, the parameter can be location of the user and the time. So when the location of the user, which is the first part of this input parameter or request, so in my request, what I'm doing, I'm sending the location parameter along with that time parameter. And using these parameters, the service will tell me what is the weather. In turn, this service is capturing data from multiple different weather stations. So as you can see this entire diagram, data consumption is happening at multiple levels. So if you look at the life cycle of any API, you will first provide input parameters. We call that as request. Then there will be some application logic or processing which will happen at the server level. In this case, that is available at the weatherstack.com. Then output format will be given to me again. What is the output that I require? I will require maybe temperature right now and the forecast for next 1 week. So that is the data which I require in the output. So that is the service which will provide me the output in the desired format. Now this format can be in multiple different format, and I may need to standardize that format. So today again, APIs allow you to standardize the format and allow you to get the data in a standard format. That is very useful. We will cover that more in detail later. So if you look at this is something which is very critical. Why APIs are required? So number one, APIs allow businesses to offer products and services to their customers at the right time, right place, and right channel. What do we mean by this? We'll take certain examples also, but we need to just go through this first before we jump into examples. So first of all, why APIs are required? They allow businesses to offer products and services to their customer at the right time, right place, and right channel. Next one is allows organizations to monetize their data. This is again very critical because sometimes you have the data and you don't know what to do with that. But that data, once you create API layer on top of it, that data is monetized and you can unlock the hidden potential in your data. And normally people say this is a B2D model. So normally you know there are models like B2B model, B2C model, or B2C model, which means business to business, business to customer, or business to customer model. In this case, we are referring to business to developer model. In this scenario, we are referring to business to developer model. It also allows you to unlock your potential by creating a new model called business to developer model. Allows for standardization. Slightly cover more in detail. So when you look at standardization, sometimes what happens is that platform like account aggregator, I saw a couple of questions which was raised earlier. When you want to ensure that all the players can participate on this platform without uh, having to invest money, how to enable this, right? If you have diverse data set, if you have different API endpoints, at that point in time, you will need to invest into standardizing that, right? But if the collective account aggregator, in this case Sahmati, is already standardizing this for you, then as an account aggregator or as a FIP or FIU, I just need to consume those endpoints. And since it is in the standardized format, simple plug and play will work here. I don't need to standardize it for multiple different users. Then you have empowered scalable business model. This is very critical. Why it is required? Because today, when you look at the old model, it was a simple model where you used to request the data. But now it is not only about requesting the data. It is also about giving the right data at the right time and right place, as we have seen on the first point, as well as making sure that the data is also having the consent layer on top of it. And when you are talking about complex business processes like Uber, Ola, you want to also make sure that you are dividing your APIs into microservices, which are even further division of the APIs at the functional level. When you divide APIs on a functional level, you can call them as a microservices. And that allows your business to be scalable. There will not be any single point of failure. And because of this, let's say something goes down, you know exactly where to look and how to fix it. Rather than closing entire business, you can just close that small service and start working on it. Once the service is fixed, you can always have fallback services in your entire architecture. If one service goes bad, you know the functional backup is available and you can go to that functional backup. Last point, but again very critical point, innovative business models. We are going to look at certain business models in our next discussion. So let me show you a couple of things. I think you can see my screen. So first of all, I will show a simple use case of how to look at whether the APIs are used in any service or not. Even without your knowledge, you are consuming APIs day in and day out. Even without your knowledge, you are visiting websites and mobile applications which are providing services through APIs. So we are trying to understand how it works and why it matters. That's the most critical part. So if you look at this is a cleartrip.com, I am sure many of you may have either visited cleartrip.com or similar services to book your flights pre-COVID era. So let's look at how to check specifically whether these services are using APIs or not. So if you are using Chrome browser, you can either press F12 or you can go to Chrome options. Under that, you can go to more tools and developer tools. What I'm trying to teach you is to identify whether the websites you are visiting, whether using APIs or not, and how to understand those APIs. So in our case, we are on cleartrip.com. You can go to developer tools, and under developer tools, you need to go to network tab. You can see the network tab. Right now, I'm on that. Now let's understand what are the services that you may require. So first service you may require is that when I type something, let's say I want to fly from Sydney. So I'm typing SYD, and as I type, you can see behind the scene, suddenly one web service or API is being called. And if I right click and click on open in new tab, you can see that this is the API. Cleartrip.com places airports search question mark string is equal to SYD. And once you see this, you can see also the response. Your response may look slightly different because I'm using one extension which formats the response. In your case, you may not have the formatted response. That's it. But the response will be the same. So what is the response? There are two key values. Okay, one is K and one is V. So key K here it is a key which is SYD, which is the search string. And based on the search string, this is the short form of the airport code, and the value is Sydney AU, Sydney, and the entire detail. Then again another key YQY, it is another name for the airport, short name for the airport, and the value is Sydney CA, and the full name is given. Now you can see if I change this Sydney SYD to MUM Mumbai, you can see that I'm getting the response. K key is equal to BOM, which is a short code for our own airport, and then the value is the full name of the airport. So what do we need to understand is that this is the API endpoint. This is what we call API endpoint, and this is get type API. How to understand that? If you look at the code, request method, you can see is the get. There are mainly two types of API calls. There are multiple modes, but mostly used modes are get and put. Then you have after that get and post, and you have put options, delete, etc., etc. But mostly online you will find get or post as a request methods. Now when you again look at this, structure is something you need to understand. So what I will do is that I will explain the structure. The API endpoint is this, and this is the parameter. After question mark, whatever you have, after question mark, whatever you have is a parameter. In our scenario, the parameter type is a string, and the value is MUM. So string is a parameter name, and MUM is the value of that parameter. The moment I change this parameter, I will get the response from the server. Why this is required, right? It is required because I want to suggest to the end user which are these airports available. You can see when I'm typing, I can see the available airports as a drop down list. how to achieve it on the real time. I can't have a drop down box with more than 10,000 airports in the world, for example. I can't have that. So the only way I can do is that I can create APIs from the database, and then I can allow users to type in few characters, and based on that, I can show them these are the options relevant to your search. So this is one of the simplest use case you can think of. Now, if you want to test your APIs, you need to use something we call as a API tester. There are API testers available like Postman, but I like something which is really available, and it is available as a part of Chrome. You can use Talend API tester. What we are going to do is that we are going to copy paste our code, which is the URL code. This is the URL code, and enter here. And now you can see the query parameter automatically it is picking it up from query parameters. Number one is mum, and key name is string. Now if you see, I can send this and I will get the response. You can see the response code is 200, means the response is okay, and this is the response which I have received. This is how you can even test APIs on your own, because if it is post API, this was the get API, and because of that you could even check it directly from the browser. But if it is the authenticated API, or if it is post API, you can't search directly like this. In that scenario, you need to use API tester, and you need to also pass on headers. Show you DNB email search API. DNB email search API, and as you can see, the method is post instead of get, and it requires headers. And this is something you can simply copy paste from the network tab itself. You can see the request headers, right? You can see the request header, and you can just copy paste the request header and put it under this by clicking row. These are the request headers. So when you look at the request headers, and the body is nothing but the string parameters which I'm sending. In my scenario, I'm sending my email ID. If I send my email ID, DNB API, based on my email ID, will tell me the company name, address, and everything, right? So again, I'm using one endpoint, API endpoint services, where I'm passing on the text. In this case, it is email ID. That is a parameter. And by passing on that parameter, input parameter, there is some processing which is happening at the server end, and it is giving me the output in a desired format. Now, this output is in a standardized format. This is what we call JSON. That's a format, and it is a JavaScript standardized notation. And this is something which you can see it is in the standard format. Now, whether I use it or you use it, the format will not change. JavaScript object notation or JSON format will not change. And because of this, any developer can use this API and get the data in the standardized format. Now, if you look at one more example, this is NSE India website. You can see the NSE India website. Similar to what we have experienced in our earlier example, we will also check what happens here. So let's say I type yes bank. You can see autocomplete query is running. And if I open this in new tab, you can see that similar API is in the place, right? So you can see I have provided the value, which is yes. This is the query parameter, yes. And query value is Q. It is just Q. And the output response is this. There are multiple outcomes. So you have symbols. First symbol is Yes Bank Limited. Weight is 10, etc., etc. So now you have certain data available to you along with the URL. So this URL you can click. That's the URL, right? And then you have another company, Sanghi Poly. Since under the polyester, you can see the yes is appearing. YES yes under the polyester. It has also searched it, and it is showing me the result. Then you can see certain other data which is available. So this is how you can see that behind the scene, there are APIs everywhere. And when you are consuming data or services, those APIs are doing everything for you, right? And before we move on to Q&A, let me show you the Sahamati collective of account aggregator, how they have approached the API. So on the sahamati.org.in, if you go to account aggregator key resources, you will find the API Swagger files. So these are the APIs which they have developed. I will show you the first set of APIs, which is account aggregator APIs. So one of the questions was that how to make sure that all the participants in the ecosystem are connected to each other, right? This is the answer. This is how you get connected, because you have standardized set of APIs. Whoever wants to become part of this ecosystem, they need to connect to these APIs, and boom, you are part of the ecosystem, right? Based on your role, if you are account aggregator, you need to connect to different set of APIs. If you are FIP, you will be connecting to the different set of APIs. And if you are FIU, again, you will be connecting to separate set of APIs. So in this scenario, I will give you one simple example. Let's say I want to get consent. So you can see that what is the format of request and what is the response. So in this scenario, this is the consent, version 1, timestamp, transaction ID, consent detail, consent start date, expiry, consent mode is view, fetch type is one time. You can have multiple fetch type. The documentation for any API will provide you that. What does this parameter mean, and what all you can put under this parameter, right? And what all you can receive, in fact, because this is the response. Based on that, you can understand what to do with that response. FI type, deposit, so on and so forth. You can go through that on your own. I am going to show you another set of APIs, FIU callback APIs, right? This is the FIU callback API. And you can see if you are FIU, to request the data, you can use these APIs. And based on what Mahesh has discussed, FIU will request to account aggregator. They are like postman. They can't see your message because it is encrypted, end-to-end encrypted. The way it is on your WhatsApp, the way it is end-to-end encrypted, this also is end-to-end encrypted. So account aggregator will become postman in this scenario, and the data will go to the FIP. FIP will again give the data basically to account aggregator, and then they will route it to the FIU. Now, in this entire chain, all these APIs are playing key roles. One first role, as I said, is the standardization of data. Second is security layer on top of it, which is achieved by consent layer as well as encryption layer. And now you need to think how you can even work. Don't think this as right now whatever it is, but think of this as what it can become. I will suggest one simple example. As Mahesh told you, right, that if you want to consume certain traditional data point, you can use APIs which are available today. What about the non-traditional or non-conventional data points? There is one service provider who actually works on user related to electricity or power and water consumption bill. They work with these providers and they provide the APIs for what if this player is coming on this platform. What happens is, because of that, I will show you the provider name. It is called UrjaNet. UrjaNet use non-traditional data. And by using this non-traditional data, they also provide APIs. And by using this non-traditional data, you can create alternative credit score mechanism or models. And even credit providers can identify the risk. So I will also give you one more example. So this is their API which I was referring to, connected to over 6,000 utility providers worldwide. So 6,000 utility providers worldwide, not only in India. So when you understand that what are the challenges which they might be facing, right? So when somebody consumes the API, how to make sure that this is with consent of the end user. That's number one. Second is that how to make sure that this is going to be with someone who is part of the regulated ecosystem. So again, using account aggregator, you can ensure that all the participants are going to be regulated in this ecosystem. And when you look at certain PDPB bill, or let's say even GDPR bill, those bills also require you to make sure that your data is secure. There is a proper data lifecycle management, and Samati by default allows you to achieve it as an inherent feature. So with this, I will ask you all to go ahead and ask me questions. I am open for any questions you may have.
Thank you so much, Vikram. In fact, I think there were a few questions that came in along the lines of consent, which you've covered. There was one question that was interesting, which was, as I think this is something you've also alluded to when you showed us the account aggregator API framework that has been provided by for standardization and practice. The question is around if APIs were not there, like what is it that's leading to the account aggregator framework being so streamlined? The API framework obviously has led to it this becoming a much cleaner and easier concept to implement, right? So I think if we were to compare this to a situation where APIs were not there, if you just want to talk about how this has really helped streamline this process and really simplified the data sharing flow.
So one of the earlier questions, if you look at, he asked that whether there will be an issue in the ecosystem by having a fragmented scenario where you have account aggregators. Few account aggregators are having few banks, and some of the banks are not having all the account aggregators. So that question, if you look at, that is the main problem statement which we need to look at. If you are not having standardized set of APIs, if you don't have standardized set of pipelines available for all the ecosystem player to connect to, then what you are also saying is right? Because then you can't connect to them easily, and there will be fragmentation which may occur in the ecosystem. Now, when you look at the traditional model, if we were supposed to do this maybe like 50 years ago, right, or 30, 40 years ago, in that scenario, how it would have worked? So what we should be doing in this scenario is that, let's say we don't have this APIs available, you will create middlewares. Okay, earlier in plain old days, you used to create middleware. That middleware will speak to multiple diverse systems. Because let's say you are talking about one application which may speak in one language, another application which may speak in another language. If you are talking about making sure that these two applications can talk to each other, you require middleware. Similar to that, not only two applications, you have so many different ecosystem players, and each of them will have different applications. And you need to make sure that your middleware is able to provide protocols which allows them to communicate with each other. And that is going to be nightmare, believe me. Creating middleware which can work with diverse set of player and ecosystem components is not easy at all. So what we are trying to do here is that we are trying to, first of all, remove that issue by creating standardized set of APIs. And because these APIs are available in a standardized format, anyone who is part of this ecosystem can simply connect to those APIs based on the role which he or she is playing, and then he's ready from the day one, right? He can just connect and he's good to go.
Perfect. I think there's another question that came in on API open banking as a concept. So the question is, can WhatsApp business APIs be used in alternate credit scoring and credit disbursal to small businesses? Is there a scope for that?
Good question. Very good question. I will tell you. First of all, you need to understand that what is open API or what is open banking. So when you look at open API means that it is not like open source, but it is more like what you are trying to do is that you want to invite all the players to use it in a way it allows everyone to gain, and it is win-win for everyone, right? So just to give you an example, in Europe, you have something called as a PSD2 initiative, and this PSD2 initiative is aiming at making sure that all the new startups who are into fintech, they can get data from the banks and provide certain innovative solutions using that data. So what you are telling the banks is that, look, you have data available with you, but you are not the owner of the data. Who is the owner of the data? Users are owner of the data, right? So make sure that you are, based on the consent of that user, you are allowing other consumers, other data consumers to also have access to that data. That is exactly what Sahmati is doing. PSD2 is the framework. You can Google PSD2, and when you look at Payment System Directive 2, there's a full form. You will see this account aggregator framework is somewhat defined over there also. It is slightly different the way they have envisaged it. The way we have designed it is slightly different. But in my opinion, the way we are building it is going to be more robust. And when you are talking about open ecosystem or open APIs, specifically what happens is that the data owner, the true data owner, can decide who can have access to his or her data and for how long and for what purpose. And using this, you are able to generate a certain new use case, unlock the value out of the data. So I told you earlier that how to unlock the value out of data. So I'll give you a very simple example, right? Earlier, what used to happen is that you had a database available for baby names, baby name database. And people used to wonder where all I can sell this data. Or let's say some Jyotishi or some other software providers who are into this line. But people realize very soon that once you create API out of it, you don't need to think about whom to sell. Developers will decide the use case and then implement it, right? So baby name API, if you look at, if you have created that, today's babies will become adult tomorrow, right? And what happens if you know, right? Most of the time in CRM, if you are maintaining CRM, you will identify the main issue people face, that there is no salute available. So let's say Mr. Vikram Pandya or Mr. Amnish Narang, right? Let's say if the Mr. is not written, you need to manually identify the gender of that person and then write Mr. or Miss against it. It becomes very tedious. Believe me, if it is a record which you are looking at is more than a million or so, it is impossible to do it manually. What people have done is that, look, when you are giving the baby name, you are somewhat clear that with 80%, 90%, 95% probability that this name belongs to a male or female. So what you are simply doing is that you are providing this as a API layer, and given the name, you are going to return whether it is more likely to be a male or female. So believe me, when people thought about this, they realized that they can use this data, baby name data, to sell it to the companies like Salesforce.com and make sure that you are monetizing your data. And today, believe me, the most likely consumer for your data is the CRM company. Suddenly, out of the blue moon, you never thought about this use case, and this became reality. Similar to that, what Mahesh and I am trying to tell you is that today, when you are looking at the entire ecosystem, we have designed it by keeping in mind certain scenarios. But if you are smart enough, you can identify n number of more scenarios where you can use it, and by tweaking it a bit, or even under the current construct, by just changing certain data points, you can get it to work for another use case, right? That is what we want you to do. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, Professor Pandey. Thank you so much. Just taking a time check. I know we've hit 4:30, and I apologies to the participants, but I think we're having a really fantastic conversation with both Vikram and Mahesh. So we'll extend this by another 10 minutes if that is fine with everyone. Vikram, there was one last question I thought I'd ask you, and then maybe after that I can go into more details of the competition. So there's a question around, will FIPs have to modify their APIs as per the standardized requirements of AAs? Or will the AA API connect flexibly with all FIP FAU APIs?
It will be standardized.
Standardized.
Perfect.
Yep.
Fantastic. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Thank you very much to both of you. I think we've had phenomenal sessions with both of you all, and I think it also reflects in the kind of questions we've been getting.
Yes.
Both of you are not part of the WhatsApp group, but we also have a WhatsApp group where students have really been raving about this. So really thank both of you for these sessions. They've really been very informative. I'll now quickly move on to some details about the competition and what is expected of you as part of this. What is expected of you? So the primary piece here is, and I think something Mahesh and Vikram have both touched upon, is that we want to tap into your creativity when it comes to ideas of how we can use this account aggregator framework. Mahesh and Vikram both provided some use cases which are currently being used, but as is very evident from the presentations, there's a wide canvas for you to look at, both in terms of what data would be relevant to come onto this account aggregator framework, as well as what different financial services players can do. So the statement that you need to work with is that we would like you to come up with innovative but practical ideas of how the account aggregator framework can be used to create opportunities in the financial services space. So some key points there. One, innovative, of course, is something that's not already being done, but practical, because these shouldn't just be blue sky ideas. We want to look at stuff that can be implemented. There will be opportunities to do that as well when I come to that. Two, the idea here is to primarily look at the financial services space for now. But I think if you go back to a slide that Mahesh had mentioned, he was very clear in terms of how, when we say opportunities, what do we mean? It could be new products, it could be new data, it could be making new processes, it could be reaching out to new customers. From a financial inclusion perspective, for example, the account aggregator framework has a very strong role to play as well. So we are very excited to work with you all and get ideas from this group on how this can be used. If you look at the slide that's being shown, and I'm focusing now on the right-hand side in terms of what the key dates are and what the next steps are. As a first step, what we will first do is we will invite you to send in a short paragraph of your ideas. So you can submit these either as an individual, or you can create a group of a maximum of 3 people. But what we're asking for is a maximum of 1 idea per group. So what we'll do is after this call, we will send a link and we'll give you details of how you will send that link. So you'll send a link after this call where you can access a Google form to submit your ideas. The deadline for submitting your ideas is 3rd June. So please keep that in mind. 3rd June, 11:59:59 is the deadline. So please, think about your ideas. Look at the reference material we will be providing. But Wednesday next week is what you need to do. You need to look at in terms of a deadline. Once you submit these ideas, what will happen is there's a panel of Semathy experts, and Mahesh has also reached out to the larger ecosystem from the account aggregator network as well as some financial services players as well. So we have a panel of some really elite people who will come and look at your ideas and will judge your ideas. And we'll be judging it on 3 primary parameters as I mentioned on the slide. One is the level of innovation. 2 is the impact that you're looking at in terms of what your idea does. And 3 is, of course, the practical implementability of the idea. Is it possible for this to see the light of day in a very small time frame? So based on these parameters, we will identify the top 10 ideas, and that will be communicated after we go through that process. So on 8th June, the shortlisting will be finished and we'll mention these ideas. Those top 10 teams will then be given an opportunity to connect with a mentor panel. So as I already mentioned, Mahesh himself, his team from Semathy, as well as a number of account aggregators and FS players have agreed to be mentors. So each team will be assigned a mentor, and you will be given the opportunity to spend about 1 hour a week talking to that mentor, talking to them about your idea, really filling it in and making it more achievable and impactful. So you'll be given a 2-week timeline to really convert your ideas into a detailed plan. What we'll do is we'll also share a template in terms of what we would be looking at for this plan so that you can also create your final presentations around that. So from 9th to the 22nd of June, that'll be the timeline you look at. And finally, on the 23rd and 24th, the 10 finalists will get the opportunity to present their final presentations to the panel. And will then, out of those 10, the winner and the runner-up will be selected and will be recognized by Mumbai FinTech Hub and by Semathy. So I think what is clear is that, of course, 3rd June is your immediate timeline. So really looking forward to you all coming in with your ideas. But what this competition is also giving you is a fantastic opportunity to really interact with seasoned professionals, interact with people who have really been there and seen a lot of the business. And it's a good opportunity for you all to network and really test out your ideas and also learn from the process. So we really invite you to participate and be part of this process. I know we're already at 4:36. I'm just going to check the Q&A to see if there's any questions that have come in. Okay, somebody's asked me to repeat the problem statement. So the problem statement is that we would like you to come up with innovative but practical ideas of how the account aggregator framework can be used to create opportunities in the financial services space. So what we'll do also is after this, we will send out emails with a link to the form. The email will also clearly mention this problem statement so that you have that context. And I'll very quickly tell you about how we will send those links, but just to cover a few more questions. Yeah, there's a question asking, will there be references we shared? Yes, we will be sharing references. Mahesh himself mentioned a couple of blogs from Semathy. We also have a couple of other reference points. So we'll be sharing that as well as the decks that were shown today for you to consider while you're looking at your ideas.
Now, just one more question is it strictly limited to banking institutions? I guess BFSI is an industry rather than banking only. So yes, BFSI, which includes banking, insurance, mutual fund, etc., So as Mahesh told you that right now the AAs are governed by 4 regulatory bodies indirectly because they have come together to allow this to happen, right? So that's the answer.
So thanks, Vikram. Yes, absolutely. This is we're not limited to banking only, but financial services is the primary space we're looking at for right now for this competition. There's another question asking whether we can share the link to join the WhatsApp group. So we will do that as soon as this towards the end of the session. And I think it's good to come to that right now. So in terms of how you get access to the link to share your ideas. So first of all, we have the emails of people who are registered for this call. So those people will immediately get an email from us after this call with the link. But if there will also be a number of you who have also been able to access this call without filling in the registration form. Don't worry. You can also participate in this. To get access to the idea link, you can either go to the Mumbai FinTech Hub social media handles that are shown on the bottom right of your screen, the Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook handles. We will be posting the link over there. B, you can send an email to support@fintecheducation.com if you're not able to get the link or if you have any specific questions for us. See, on your screen right now, you'll be able to see 3 numbers. If you drop an email or drop a message to those numbers, we will get you added to the WhatsApp group. Alternatively, Pratik, if you could just copy paste the WhatsApp link in the Q&A field right now for everybody to get access to that. That is also the last way to do it. So just to reiterate, you will get access to this link. Either you will receive an email or you can look at social media, WhatsApp, or the email just shown. Click on that link. The link will give you a capability to register your name, your group name, your individual contact details, and also give you a space to fill in your idea. We're looking at an idea that's no more than 500 words, so be brief, but make sure you capture succinctly what you want to talk about. The idea will be judged on 3 parameters: the innovative nature of it, the impact of it, and the implementability. Pratik, have you been able to? I know you're sharing screen, but you want to just quickly put it into the chat?
Yeah, it's already up. I shared. Just check if you can see.
Okay, it's not appearing for me, but I'm guessing the students will have it. But otherwise, we've also mentioned these other 3 links you can look at. I'm just pausing for a minute for any other questions that might come up in the Q&A. While I wait, just as we mentioned earlier, the top 10 ideas are the ones that will get selected for the detailed round of 2 weeks of building your plan and getting access to mentors. So don't miss out on this opportunity. Also, we invite you to share this chat link and invite any of your colleagues and your students to also follow the social media handles and join the group to expand the participation for this as well. It's a pan-India competition. As both Mahesh and Vikram mentioned, we're really excited to see the ideas that come from you guys, and looking forward to having some real innovative solutions coming up. Okay, I don't see any other questions, so I think we've covered most of what we had. Just want to take the opportunity once again to thank Mahesh and Vikram. Thank you so much. I think we've had a really fantastic session. What we'll also do is we will share, like I mentioned, we will share material for the students to have a look at. And if there are any specific questions that we find, we may also pass it on to you for any follow-up Q&A. But also, thank you so much for all the students who joined in. And looking forward to your answers. All the best to the competition. Bye.
Thanks, Amish, and thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. A pleasure.